All right, folks, get ready for this. Traveling to the UK. Well, listen up because things are changing. Big time. Buckle up. We're about to break it all down for you.
Yeah, things are going to look a little different now.
So, quick question for you. Ever heard of an ETA?
Maybe. Like estimated time of arrival?
Not quite. We're talking electronic travel authorization.
Oh, right. That new UK thing, right?
Bingo. Think of it kind of like that e-stay thing for the US, but for the UK.
Basically, yeah. Even if you don't need a visa, you got to get this pre-approval.
Okay, so it's like a digital, hey, UK, I'm coming over, but like any good hello. I bet this one comes with a price tag, right?
You know it. £10 or about $12 in US dollars. Not too bad, really, especially since it lasts for 2 whole years. Multiple trips up to 6 months each time.
All right, not bad at all. So who exactly needs this ETA?
Well, pretty much anyone who's not already required to have a visa.
So like tourists, business travelers, folks just passing through.
Yep. Even the kiddos, everyone.
But there's always fine print, right? Who gets to skip this whole ETA thing?
Of course. Well, obviously, British and Irish citizens, they're good to go.
Makes sense. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah. People with passports from British overseas territories, and anyone who already lives in the UK.
Gotcha. So anyone who already has a strong tie to the UK is in the clear.
Exactly. And folks who already need a visa, like from China or Ecuador, they don't need an ETA on top of that.
All right, so this ETA thing is shaking things up. But you know what's interesting? Not everyone's jumping for joy about it.
Really? Who's not happy?
Well, Heathrow Airport's been making some noise.
Makes sense, I guess. They're one of the busiest airports in the world.
Exactly. And they're worried this ETA thing could make the UK less appealing for travelers, especially those just passing through.
Ah, I see. Less appealing, less traffic, less money.
Right. And they think it could even hurt the UK's economy in the long run.
Wow, that's a big deal. So is the UK like the only one doing this whole pre-authorization thing?
Nope, not at all. It's like this new trend or
Yeah.
something.
Really? Like who else?
Well, Europe's getting in on the action too.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Yeah, they're rolling out something called ETIS,
ETs. What's that stand for?
European Travel Information and Authorization System. Catchy, right?
Oh, boy. Another acronym.
Right. But basically, it's their version of the ETA covering a bunch of European countries,
How many countries are we talking?
like 30. And get this, it's set to launch mid-2025, right around the same time as the UK's ETA.
So if I'm flying from, say, Canada to Paris, but I have a layover in London,
Ooh, good question.
would I need both an ETA and an ETS?
You got it.
Wow, that's a lot of digital hoops to jump through.
It sure is.
Mm-hmm.
An ETS is a bit cheaper than the UK's ETA, €7, which is like $7.40 US. But here's the kicker.
What's that?
It's valid for 3 years.
So a little less money and a little more time.
Exactly. But either way, if you're from, say, the US, Canada, even the UK itself,
Yeah.
you'll need that ETIAS to set foot in those 30 European countries.
Wow, so much to keep track of.
Right. So much for those carefree travel days, eh?
It's a brave new world of travel, that's for sure.
It really is. But don't worry, we're here to break it all down for you. We'll be right back with more on ETAs, GTAs, and what it all means for your future travel plans.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
All right, so before the break, we were talking about Heathrow and how they're, well, not exactly thrilled about this ETA thing.
Yeah, their concerns got me thinking, like, what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? Could these new systems make it harder to travel the world?
Right. It's like if even a quick layover requires all this extra hassle and fees, people might start thinking twice about those multi-stop trips.
Totally. It could make the world feel a little less, connected.
Exactly. And that could lead to some pretty big changes, like maybe we'll see a rise in direct flights.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Or even more people choosing to vacation closer to home.
Right. Which could be good for local economies, but what about cultural exchange?
That's a good point. It's like, we want to be safe and secure, but we also don't want to create barriers that prevent people from experiencing different cultures.
It's a tough balance, for sure. And it raises some ethical questions, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, are these systems fair to everyone? Do they create unnecessary obstacles for people who pose no threat?
Those are some heavy questions. And speaking of important stuff, our deep dive into the source material actually revealed some key things to keep in mind when applying for these authorizations.
Like what?
Well, for starters, always use the official channels.
Makes sense. I bet there will be a ton of shady websites popping up promising to fast-track your application or whatever.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But using those could not only put your personal information at risk, but you could also end up with inaccurate information on your application.
Right, which could lead to even bigger problems down the road.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So stick with the official government websites or apps. It's the safest way to go.
Okay, good to know. What else?
Well, this one might seem obvious, but apply early.
Yeah, don't wait till the last minute.
Exactly. Processing times are supposed to be pretty quick, but why risk it?
True, true. Anything else we should keep in mind?
Oh yeah, make sure your passport is valid for a good chunk of time after your trip.
Oh, right. You don't want to get all the way to the airport and realize your passport's expired.
Exactly. Speaking of timing, isn't it interesting that both the UK's ETA and Europe's ETAs are launching in 2025?
Yeah, that is kind of weird. Do you think it's a coincidence?
Maybe, maybe not. It almost feels like there's a bigger shift happening here. Like, are we moving toward a world where these pre-authorization systems become the norm?
It's possible. Maybe it's a way for countries to standardize security measures. Or maybe it's just a fluke.
Either way, it's definitely a trend worth watching. So let's get practical here. For our listeners who are planning trips, where do they go to apply for these ETAs and ETAs?
Well, for the UK's ETA, the easiest way is to download their app.
Oh, they have a dedicated app.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. They link it directly to your passport, so it's secure and easy to use.
Cool. What about ETIAS?
For ETIAS, you'll need to go through their website.
Okay, so you found the right platform. What kind of info do you need to have handy when applying?
It's pretty standard stuff. Your passport info, travel itinerary, basic personal details.
And, of course, the fees.
Right, right. £10 for the UK ETA and €7 for the European ETAs. You can usually pay online with a credit or debit card. Easy peasy.
So you've submitted your application, paid the fee, now you wait. How long does it usually take to get approved?
Generally, it's pretty quick. You should have a decision within a few days, if not sooner. But again, it's always better to apply early, just in case.
Great advice. And once you're approved, what happens when you arrive at the border? Do you need to print anything out, or is it all digital?
It's all digital. When they scan your passport, your authorization pops up in their system. They might ask you a few basic questions, but you should be good to go.
Sounds simple enough. But what happens if your application gets denied?
Well, don't freak out. You can usually appeal the decision or reapply.
Yeah, there are usually resources online that can guide you through that process.
Exactly. So we've talked about the potential impact of these systems on global travel, some practical tips for applying, and even touched on some ethical considerations.
Yeah, but there's still so much to unpack. Like, what are the long-term consequences of these systems?
Yeah.
How will they affect individual countries and the global community as a whole?
Those are big questions, and we're going to dive into them in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been unpacking these new travel authorization systems, ETAs and ETAs, and there's a lot to consider.
It's true. It really makes you think about the future of travel.
Right, like how could these systems change things in the long run?
Yeah.
For countries, travel trends, even international relations.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is tourism.
Tourism, how so?
Well, think about it. If intercontinental travel becomes more of a hassle, more expensive, more paperwork,
Yeah.
people might start choosing to travel closer to home.
Ah, I see. So more regional tourism?
Exactly. It could be a boost for local economies.
But wouldn't that limit cultural exchange on a global scale?
It could. That's one of the potential downsides.
It really makes you wonder, will we see new travel hubs emerging?
It's possible. Or maybe some countries will become less appealing to visit because of the extra hurdles.
Right. It's like a whole new set of factors to consider when planning a trip.
It is. And then there are the ethical implications.
Oh, yeah, we can't forget about those.
Like, are these systems truly fair to all travelers? Or do they create biases based on where you're from?
It's a valid concern. And are we sacrificing global interconnectedness for security?
It's a tough question. And there are no easy answers.
It feels like we're navigating uncharted territory here.
We are. We're trying to find that balance between security and openness.
Right. We want to feel safe, but we also don't want to shut ourselves off from the world.
Exactly. And as travelers, we have a responsibility to be part of this conversation.
Absolutely. We need to stay informed, engage in dialogue, and advocate for policies that consider all sides of the issue.
Well said. It's about finding solutions that prioritize both safety and inclusivity.
And as we move forward, We have to think about the long-term consequences.
Will these systems ultimately bring the world closer together, or will they push us further apart?
Those are some heavy questions to ponder. It feels like we're at a turning point in how we travel.
We are. And the decisions we make now will shape the future of travel for generations to come.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into ETs and ETIAS.
We covered a lot of ground, from the nitty-gritty details to the big picture implications.
And as always, we encourage our listeners to do their own research. There's so much information out there.
And we've included some helpful links in the description.
Don't be afraid to dig deeper, challenge assumptions, and form your own opinions.
The world is constantly changing, and critical thinking is more important than ever.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Please share your thoughts, your questions, your insights with us in the comments.
We'd love to hear from you.
Let's keep the conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring.